Mr. Hauser, it's back to us. I like games every once in a while, and so I have some questions. The questions are going to be, is it political theater or progress? You ready? The first question is going to be, doing an executive order revoking birthright citizenship, political theater or progress?
Political theater. It doesn't help the mission of ICE.
Okay. How about revoking student visas?
It takes up the time of ICE officers and is political theater, and it takes away from the national security and public safety mission.
How about bashing car windows of people with no criminal record?
That's driven from quotas of arrests being driven by the White House. And that is politicization of ICE immigration enforcement, so it's political theater.
How about deporting people who are even citizens? That's not even deportation, but you know what I'm saying.
It's political theater, and I believe that this White House is getting the outcome, the reaction that they want and they desire.
How about arresting political opponents?
That would be political theater.
Yeah, so here's the deal. I know that you've been cut off a number of times as you have tried to give answers to various questions. Thank you so much for explaining that even this committee hearing is actually a bunch of political theater, because there's a lot of things that we could be talking about. We could be talking about the fact that we are currently in reconciliation, and while everyone else has been told to do things such as make sure that you take food out of people's mouths, make sure that you get rid of people's health care, make sure that you are harming our federal workers even more by making sure that the resources that they need to be able to do their job just kind of disappear. But at the same time, I think the way that Mr. Moskowitz figured it, it would be approximately $44,000 as relates to a bonus for each ICE agent. Is that correct?
It's incorrect. It was $42,000.
Okay, my bad. But the reality is that we do have real problems. And I don't know how we're gonna get to real solutions if we continue to just make everything about politics. As it was properly outlined by the gentleman from Florida, that was a Republican bill. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't really a big fan of the bill myself on my side. So I know that there was a lot of conservative stuff in that bill that was going to be harmful. And with that, I am gonna yield back to the gentleman from Florida.
Yeah, and I'm gonna yield time to the ranking member in a second. Mr. Marino, on that topic of bonuses, just real quick, do you support ICE agents getting $42,000 worth of bonuses? There's $800 billion for bonuses. Okay. I say billion, I'm sorry, million, I apologize. $800 million in there for bonuses. Do you support that?
Yeah, what kind of bonuses are we talking about? Are we talking retention bonuses?
This is a great question, Mr. Marino. Great question. They didn't say at all in the backup. Yeah. There was no documentation at all what the bonuses were for or what it was just $800 million for bonuses. It sounded like a lot of money for federal employees for bonuses. Not that we don't want to treat our federal employees great, of course we do. But I had suggested $500 million for bonuses, and they said, no, $500 million sounds a little better, right?
Well, look.
Or zero. Are you at zero for bonuses, maybe?
I never received a $42,000 bonus.
Good, perfect, we agree. I would like
however,
to yield.
However, times are different. Recruiting is tougher. Retention is a challenge. And if that's something that it's needed for, I would support it.
So do you support those bonuses for NOAA, FEMA, the Pentagon, all of the departments, or just ICE?
I would support strategic use of retention bonuses where they were needed.
Okay. I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Raskin.
Thank you, Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Hauser introduced the important idea of political theater. You've introduced the idea of bureaucratic bloat. And our ranking member on the subcommittee has talked about the assault on the living standards of millions and millions of people in the country and their health care. I just want to add one final piece of this, which is that Donald Trump and his family have been making more than $1 billion a month since they got into office on the crypto scam, and now he's collecting a $400 million airplane from the dictator of Qatar. There is an absolute ripoff of the taxpayers taking place and a prostitution of the presidency. And I think that completes the picture for what's taking place in our country today. I yield back to the gentleman, and thank you.
And I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.